This is going to be a video on grounding and using, developing a grounding practice and using it in our everyday lives. It is in response to a comment that I got on a video that I did on the Pagan Perspective from Better Life Broadcasting. So I'm just going to go ahead and read that comment real quick. And so this is going to be specifically responding to them, but I hope that maybe there'll be some useful, that the video itself might be useful to other folks as well. So the comment goes, one of these times, can you describe your short grounding practice? Maybe an adaptation if it's too personal. I feel like I should do this more often, but every time I read something about it, it starts with clear your mind and form an intention/visualization. Honestly, that's not a short process, at least for me. But having to do the equivalent of 10 to 15 minutes of meditation in order to ground makes it nearly impossible to do so in a stressful or emotionally charged situations, which is when I feel I could most use it. So this is an awesome comment, and I decided to do a video for this instead of a comment response, instead of a type response, because there's so much involved with it. I've been wanting to do it all week, but not had the time until now. So I hope that this is useful for you. So, see, I've got a neighbor coming in, but okay, they're going to the other house. So, and this was specifically responding, I think, to something that I had said in there about taking 40 or 60 seconds to do a grounding practice. And I think that I totally agree with the 10 to 15 minutes not being very practical in the moment. And so I'm going to share with you my sort of thought and approach on that. And I think that the grounding that I was talking about is really grounded in that longer practice. And it starts from being really solid, having that base, and practicing the 10 to 15 minute one, going through and often I think that a lot of those visualizations, those guided meditations, things like that can be really helpful to learn to enter that state in the first place. And it probably would be very helpful to go through and do it as a meditation with closed eyes and go through and just get used to doing that every day. Once in that state, we can use that as the touchstone in other parts of our life to be able to return to that state. So from there, you can set some people call it an anchor, to be able to help you to return to that. So maybe a word or an image that you use once you have gotten to this state where you feel like you're grounded, where you feel like you've got that connection and that centering. One really helpful technique to do that is to do something once you're in that state that makes your brain think. And this is kind of hard to describe, but something that is just a little bit different. So for instance, this is kind of a classic one, but go ahead and lace your fingers together like this. And just actually go ahead and do it. And when you do it, chances are you just did it the same way that you do almost every single time you lace your fingers. And it feels natural to you. There's a natural way that you want to. But if you unlace them and move it over one more, and put your fingers over, it probably feels kind of weird. And that little bit off, that little bit weird feeling is something that you can use to help yourself return to a state that you've just created. So if you get to that grounded state, you can lace your fingers the wrong way for what you're used to. Or you could do something weird with your tongue that feels just a little bit off. And that's an immediate trigger to return to that place, to that state. So then once you get into the practice of doing the longer meditation, the longer grounding work, then you can do a shorter one, maybe a medium length one. Do something that's only 5 minutes long. And actually, before moving on to that, is to say that the periodically returning to the longer practice, to going through the full grounding practice, however long that takes you, I think is really important. It's not like you graduate and no longer need to do it. Like, it's something that I think maybe not every day, but something that might be returned to on a weekly basis, or a seasonal or something like that. But then moving to, once from there, to doing a medium length. And again, you can use some sort of prepared material or prepare your own and get used to trying to do it in a shorter period of time. And from there, there's little things that you can add into it. Try, once you get comfortable with the shorter period, try doing it with your eyes open. And then maybe try practicing with your eyes open and walking around and helping yourself return to that state with your crossed fingers or twisted tongue or whatever your anchor is, or the symbol or the words that you chose. And then here's where it can get really fun, and kind of challenging, but in a powerful and training sort of way. Something that you can do, and this is something that I'll do periodically, is practice using that to ground myself in really stressful situations. So I will find something that upsets me. I will, I'll get on YouTube and I'll find a talk by somebody who I really, really disagree with and really pisses me off. And I'll let myself get upset and worked up about that. And then practice grounding and centering and letting that go with that medium length grounding practice that I talked about. And that's something that can, in normal day-to-day life, we usually don't have 5 minutes to step back, but that 5 minutes is the first step to learning how to do it in 60 seconds or in 3 breaths. Or sometimes we do. Sometimes we can step away and go to the restroom or do something like to sit in our car for a minute or something like that. But learning and to take it from the 15 down to the 5, and then practicing using it in real life. From there, you can start practicing with the length that I had talked about, with the 40 to 60 seconds or whatever that takes. And again, using those anchors to get there, just having that practice, know the feeling that you're returning to. And of course, periodically also doing those longer ones as well, just to stay in the habit, keep that association. And then from there, practicing being able to do it in just a few breaths. And it is practice. It's practice. If you don't do it for a while, then it might take a while to get back into being able to do it. And using the practicing, getting yourself looking at something that upsets you, so that you have the real practice of using it when you're in a social situation or you're in a dangerous situation where you need to calm yourself very quickly to be able to be present with it. And maybe not a dangerous situation either. Maybe you're out in the woods and you really want to be present, but you're doing the storytelling that we all do, that we're not being present, and we want to go, wait, remember? Okay, let's be present. So I guess what I'm saying here is working your way from practicing the long meditation or practice, whatever it is, and working your way to shorter and shorter periods, and not beating yourself up about it, but just trying to practice and get to that place. And there's all kinds of different techniques out there, different practices. I'll share with you the 2 kind of models that I use. And one of them, another awesome community member, Kitty, commented that they use the tree meditation, and I've got their comment written down here, which really sounds like the one that I use quite a bit. I've got sort of my daytime one and my nighttime one, and they called it the tree meditation. I call it the great tree, but that's using the visualization or And a visualization doesn't necessarily have to be visual, it could be a tactile, it could be whatever sense you're really comfortable with, but feeling yourself as a tree and feeling your as though roots are growing down through you, that you are roots growing down through your feet into the earth and going down into the cool, finding those nice pores down below in the moisture, and then letting your roots continue and continue until you find the warmth of the earth, of the core, and then bringing back up that wonderful energy, the refreshing energy that you need, and letting it climb up through you and sprout out of you like branches with leaves unfurling, and receiving the light, the energy from the sun, so from the sky and from the earth, and letting all of that tension out, down through you, through your roots, and releasing it into the ground where it can be fertilized, where it can be reused, where it can be melted in the core, and bringing up that wonderful energy. I think that one I've got a guided meditation on this channel that I did years ago, so the recording quality is probably not great, but I've got something up of that. There's a lot of scripts of that you can find to work with, and I think that is a really powerful one, and it's a go-to. And so I'll use that. I'll use the shorthand of just feeling of and feeling roots go down through me and into the ground and pull that energy up just with breaths. Just and when I do my 40 seconds or my 60 seconds, I'll do a little bit more detailed, but just working through the exact same thing that I just said here, but just really feeling that out. The other one that I use is one that I haven't seen written anywhere. I haven't seen anyone else use it, but I'm sure that it's a similar thing that other people must do. But I like to practice. I practice sun time and star time, where every day I try and make sure to get out and get the sun on my skin, and for at least a few minutes every night, I try and go out and be present with the night as well. So I will use the feeling of looking up at the night sky. And there's usually two very strong feelings that people often have when they look up at the night sky. And the first is this feeling of absolute terror and insignificance when you're looking up and you're seeing all of the vastness of these stars and sometimes planets and galaxies, and you feel just tiny. And on the other side, there's this feeling, there's also a feeling folks will often have looking up at the vastness and feeling incredibly comforted, and this feeling part of this wonderful, this connection, this oneness. And it's just this, just wow, this awe. And both of those feelings are feelings that I have, and when I look at the sky and I feel, and those are things that can be felt simultaneously. And so I use that transition, that feeling of that lost and hopeless tininess, and I go, okay, I'm going to feel that transition, that the expanse. And this one I don't have as good words for, but letting myself just feel as though I expand into the sky, into being part of the Milky Way itself. And I know that might sound like it's very airy and woof and away, but it is incredibly grounding, because that is, that's Earth's home. So it's this, that for me, feeling that transition between those two senses, imagining the stars, if I'm not actually outside, and just letting myself expand and become the Milky Way, become part of the universe, is another way that I will work with grounding, work with centering, and also that letting go in moments of tension. So those are the main ones that I use. and use modifications of that. So I might have a 5-minute version of that, or just a few breaths. Every day I try to do the minute-long version, and then in the moment, because we have tons of moments every day where we get triggered, right? And just letting that go and going, okay, let me ground. I need to be present. And moments too that aren't about being triggered, but ones where at least I want to be fully present. You know, I really want to be there present with my daughter instead of worked up about whatever. So I'll use that, and wow, and it just changes everything. So yeah, this is probably gonna take a long time to go through the rendering process and the uploading and all of that, but I will link this to your comment as soon as it goes up, and I hope that there was something useful in this probably quite long video. So thanks again for the awesome comment, and I hope this was useful to folks. So until next time.